Okay, question out to Christians. What do you think if I'm not going to believe in your God? Some of you are going to say I'm going to go to hell. And of course, I outright say, well, you're just spreading your hatred of those who choose to believe differently. That's all that is. It's a form of spreading bigotry. And hell is a ridiculous concept that only children could ever be afraid of. Any adult that's afraid of hell should be thoroughly embarrassed with themselves. But if you're one of those Christians that doesn't believe in hell, then why are you still so adamant in me joining your cult? Why should I put faith in a God that has ever said once to kill gays? It's in the Bible. God has said it once, and we know that there's nothing wrong with homosexuals, so we know that God is wrong. And then on top of that, if you don't believe in hell, then how do you call yourself a Christian? Hell didn't exist in the Bible until Jesus came. Jesus brought hell with his part of the story. That's how he's supposed to work. He's supposed to sell you on the idea that you're going to be destroyed, so that you try to do anything you can not to be destroyed. You know? But still, if you don't believe in hell, what do you think is going to happen to me if I don't believe in your God? Why are you still so viciously angry at me for not believing? When I argue against you and saying, well, hell is such a ridiculous concept, blah, 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 you say, oh, I don't even believe in hell. That's not what's going to happen anyway. You guys are always changing your stories whenever the argument goes someplace you're not comfortable with. If you guys can stick to one consistent story, that might help us, take you a little more seriously. If you have 33,000, that was the old number, I've heard now it's over 40,000, denominations of Christianity, which translates to 40,000 disagreeing interpretations of one book, of one message, apparently. How can there be so many perspectives on the one true message? How can there be so many interpretations or misinterpretations, unless the one message is not just one message, but several messages that contradict each other? The Bible will wax eloquently on promoting something in one chapter, and then it'll smash it and destroy it in another chapter, saying that it's evil and sinful and should be avoided. Where's the consistency here? What are we supposed to base your beliefs on if you don't even agree with each other on what your beliefs should be? From a book that tells you that you should believe in practically everything. You should believe in slavery, and you should believe that you shouldn't enslave your own fellow nations, which is the basis of why I say your God is racist. It just doesn't make sense. Why should, thou shalt not kill, but go kill those people so that we can take over their temples and you can take their women and children as slaves or whatever. Hey, kitty. But yeah, why would there be such inconsistency, such contradiction in something that claims to be one absolute true message? When can you answer me what happens to me? Can multiple Christians, like anyone really watches my videos at all, but can multiple Christians answer and tell me what they think is going to happen to me if I don't believe in your absolutely, completely ridiculous story? I mean, and I'm not saying ridiculous just to be insulting. I will describe your story back to you. Your God has let us live for a couple thousand years going to hell without forgiving us because he doesn't know how to forgive, and yet he is forgiving. But he doesn't know how to forgive us for biting that apple, even though most of us never did any of that. It was an ancestor that never existed that did it. And yet he is still blaming us. And you call him a forgiving God? You know, do you see how ridiculous it sounds to those of us who don't believe? Do you at least see that? Well, you have to see that, otherwise you wouldn't believe in faith, because faith is the requirement that even when you know it's wrong, you have to believe it. But don't you see how it's ridiculous? Doesn't that ridiculousness shake you out of it? I mean, that's our point. We're hoping to show you how ridiculous it is, to shake you out of it, because we know you are smarter than your religion wants you to think you are. I mean, how is that message a message of hate? Come on. Your religion, which tells people to kill gays, that tells people women should not have position over men, take it out of context. Yeah, well, that's said in your Bible. What kind of context can there be? If your God permits this, your God has permitted it once, and your God is imperfect, and your God is wrong. How can we display it any wrong to you? Anyone who acknowledges that they are Christian, but refuses to acknowledge the Old Testament, while picking out the whole 10 commandments, which are in the Old Testament, and picking out the anti-gay quotes, which are in the Old Testament, along with stoning your rape victims to death, or making your rape victims marry their rapists, that type of thing. All those rules that were pretty much, if you look at them, they were made specifically to discourage women from speaking out against rape, because they would both end up being killed, or both end up being married to each other. Why would a woman confess to being raped if she was going to be forced to marry her rapist? Can't you see the reasons behind these laws being made are not divine by any stretch? When you examine the Bible and examine these types of rules and examine why a human might want to tell these rules to other humans, it all crumbles down right in front of your eyes. So I say to you, ask to you, according to your Bible, which says many things on this subject, what do you think is going to happen to me when I don't believe? And if you don't believe in hell, that I won't be tortured, that your God isn't stupid and hateful in that sort of way to allow a place like hell to exist? I'm kidding again. If you think your God is like evil enough to allow a place like hell to still exist, that should also crumble your beliefs and expectations. Anyway. But yeah, so what do you think? Why don't you all have one consistent message if it's supposed to be one consistent message that you all agree on? How can you have misinterpretations if there aren't contradictions in the Bible? If the Bible is not full of errors and flaws and contradicting itself? How can you acknowledge the Jesus part of the Bible and refuse to acknowledge the Moses part of the Bible without being a complete hypocrite, or admitting that the Bible contradicts itself, that God contradicts himself, and that God's laws contradict each other? Otherwise, you wouldn't have any problem believing in the Old Testament. You wouldn't have any problem being a hypocrite in saying that, well, those are the old laws, they don't apply to me, even though Jesus says he came to fulfill all of those laws and not to reject them or replace them. He came to reinforce them. Do you see, Dick? I mean, it's clear to anyone who thinks for 5 seconds